You know, I think when the Europeans came to New Zealand, what we saw through the expansion of the British Empire, I suppose, into New Zealand was an excellent example of the expansion of human rights. Because when New Zealand signed the Treaty of Waitangi with the native population, Maori, Maori agreed to it. And they agreed to it for very good reason. Because by embracing the British Commonwealth, the British system, they saved themselves. Because at the time, Maori were basically killing each other through horrific tribal warfare, cannibalizing each other, they're famous for that, and had extremely short life expectancy. You know, life is short and brutal. And obviously insane. I mean, you can't expose kids to that kind of violence without making them go all a bit nutty. Uh, and just odious. In fact, at the time, many people would argue that Māori were on the brink of extinction. They were that violent. So when all the chiefs, the Māori chiefs, agreed to have a partnership, a union, not so much a partnership, a union, with the British people, they embraced human rights, and we got the expansion of human rights. Now, was it a good deal for Māori, really? Hell yes. They don't die in their 30s now. They die like everybody else in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They are filthy rich compared to what they used to be. Tribal warfare ended, and all the other wonderful gifts that come from industrialization and also the British system, well, the system of the industrialized world of human rights. And it's a really good example of the expansion of human rights, the conquest of human rights, if you like, because it wasn't just done through conquest, it was done through a treaty. Māori ultimately embraced it. And historically, in the 50s, 60s, and maybe to a lesser degree in 70s at least, New Zealand was celebrated all over the world as an outstanding example of a unification of two peoples, because New Zealand most certainly was not a racist country, nothing like what historic America was like. We have, Māori were never slaves or anything like that. Things are a little bit different now, simply because you've got a small group of Māori grievers who dig up the past and look at it from a completely one-sided view and have the idea that a criminal record should somehow be inheritable with the way they act. And just massive amounts of shit stirring has led to a treaty grievance industry, where people basically kicking up crap because they can and because it's profitable. But that's another story. That's a side note. We never used to have these real issues in New Zealand. It was just the shit stirrers basically that created it. But regardless, I think the essential thing to take out of it is the tremendous success of the expansion of human rights and good systems into New Zealand. That's the kind of empire expansion I would like to see all over the world. I love the idea of the civilized world, the Western civilized world, going up to other nations or parts of other nations and saying, why don't you guys hold a referendum to see if you want to become part of our union and inherit the protections and the strengths and the standards, the human rights standards of our society, and let the people ask themselves if they want to do that. And if they choose it, or if a part of the society chooses it, like a part of Iran chooses it, or Saudi Arabia chooses it, or a part of the Congo, then let them have it. Expand that way. Because I think it's a wonderful thing to strive for. And it's one of those things that can have the effect of getting rid of the barbarians at the gate. Because if we can humanize the world in the same way that Māori were humanized, basically, you defeat your enemies if you make them no longer your enemies. And I don't think there's any problem with wanting to expand Western civilization, preferably voluntarily, at all, to conquer other nations in that sense. Because it's not really like America versus Iran. It's human rights versus Stone Age culture, barbaric Stone Age culture. That's what it really is. And I would like to see the system of human rights that we know in Western civilization conquer the entire world. And I think it's something that we can ultimately strive for, or should strive for. Carry on the same trend, the same great example created by New Zealand 150 years ago. Why not? Thank you.